Hello everyone. This is the second video of Hydra intermediate tutorial, and if you follow until now, congratulations. And today's topic is layer, and I know that we talked about layers in the beginner's tutorial, but just like in the first video of intermediate tutorial, feedback, I talked about feedback is not a function, it's a technique, it's some kind of combination of tools that you learned from the beginner's tutorial. And in this video with the layer, I do the same thing. That is, it's not just about, okay, using this layer function, using this mult function, but how do we combine them to make something that is, so we have this building block. So if you haven't watched the beginner's tutorial, I highly recommend to watch them. Or, I mean, if you already know the basic functions, that's great. But if you haven't, if you somehow ended up in this video, you might want to recap some of the previous videos. Because we're basically building things with those building blocks and achieve some compositions, for example, using layer. And also one of the, the objective is to do composition, but also in the next video, I'm aiming to do some more feedback stuff with the layers. So we kind of combine this feedback and layer to do some more advanced things. So let's minimize myself. And here, so just to set some kind of objective, I opened my example here. I hide the code so that I'm not cheating. Basically, like, let's recreate something like this. This is my example that can randomly show up on the Hydra editor. And I made it, well, quite some years ago, but basically it's a very simple sketch that uses OSC and some layers. And I think it's a good demonstration to like recreate this, like step by step, basically. So the idea is that it has 3 layers, and well, let's go from the basic one, like the background, which is in that case like blue, but I feel today like pink. So, well, if it's red, then it's solid 100 out. It's a little bit harsh, so I'll just like soften it, something like this. Or if you want a bit more pinkish, maybe this is better. I don't know, something like this. Let's keep this as a background, and I'll overlay things on top of it. And well, I said already OSC, but if you want to make stripes, OSC is a good starting point. Let's just separately, before like layering, I'll make a separate code, OSC out. This will make very basic OSC, and I'll just stop the movement. Default parameter is 60 and 0.1, but this makes the movement, so I'll set it to 0. I mean, you can keep it 0.1, but for the viewers, I think it's less distracting when the windows, the image is not moving. So I'll just keep it like this, or maybe I'll just keep it like very slow movement, something like this. I don't know if is it more disturbing? I don't know, distracting. Anyways, so if you want to do stripes, basically the way to do it is you add thresh. Now, thresholded, so what thresh does, probably you know it, but it's basically make it into like binary colors, which is actually not exactly true. We'll look into it, but basically, just to simplify it, it produces black and white colors. So if we want to basically, if we slap this on top of a solid, then we have stripe on top of this pink color. So let's try it. The way we do layering is we have this layer function, and just avoid the messiness, I will make new line here so that now we have the sandwich, like nested sandwich, and I'll just copy this, paste it in here, but it doesn't work this way because if we are using like a source or the texture as a parameter for layer, blend, modulate, we take this out. So it's like open sandwich, and this should work. I'll do Alt or Option Enter, which evaluates the block. Because if you do Control Shift Enter, now this will take over, the last line will take over, so you don't want to do it. I haven't really explained, but this Option Enter or Alt Enter, depending on your computer, it basically evaluates that block. But is it right? Because now I'm not seeing the solid anymore, it's black and white. The reason why is that if you work with layer, just like GIMP or Photoshop or Illustrator, you have to work with alpha channel. And Thresh, unfortunately, or fortunately, it will not affect alpha channel, and OSC doesn't have alpha channel, which means that it's like opaque texture. So the black part is like black. You're like actually using black paint. So they have like white paint, black paint, white paint, black paint on top of the pink layer. So you don't see anything. What we want is, instead of painting black, we want to leave it transparent or cut it out. And the way it works is you can use Luma function and Alt Enter. And what Luma does is, by default, it's 0.5 is a parameter or argument, and what is below 0.5 as a luminance, so like darker color, will be cut out, and alpha will be 0. So now this black part becomes 0, and now, yeah, happily we have this first step of slapping this white color, or like they like tapes on top of the backdrop, which is solid 1, 0.2, 0.5. You might notice that there is like little, like a few pixels of black color, and where it's coming from, it's not a bug. It's normal how it happens with Hydra, because Thresh. Okay, so I can be also explicit. The default argument first parameter is 0.5, and the second one is 0. I don't know, 0.03 or something. Oops. Oh, because I did Control Shift Enter. Okay. So what this means is like the blurriness or tolerance. Basically, so what we want is actually 0. If we do 0, ooh, it's a bit wobbly now, and maybe that's why it's designed to have a bit of this tolerance, so that it adds a little bit of blurriness. So Thresh is actually not only producing black and white, there is like some colors in between to make it just, soften the result a little bit. And if you enhance this, you can actually have some more visible lines there, but maybe just keep it like 0.03, or I can make it 0, but it starts to like make it really like wobbly effect, like especially when it's like moving slowly. So let's just keep it like this. And Luma also has it. I can be also explicit, but it doesn't really matter at this point because, no, I can leave it like this. So the first step is almost done. Why I say almost? Because also these, let's say, tapes, the white tapes, should have some kind of waviness to it. So let's just go back to this bottom line. I can just update it like this, so I can have the same representation. So now if I run it, by the way, this one now has Luma. I evaluated the last line, and it has Luma, so it has alpha channel, but sadly, or I don't know, well, for me it's sad, but the browser cannot be transparent. Well, depending on the operating system, but browser cannot be transparent, so what it's seeing now is the black color, which is not that this texture is producing, because this has Luma, so it has alpha channel, but there is like an ultimate backdrop provided by Hydra, which is black color. So we're kind of like seeing through the stripes and seeing this black color, which is from Hydra editor actually. Unless you start like change some parameters in the inspector, you might be able to change the backdrop, or maybe you can make it transparent and you can see through the browser. I actually saw it on Ubuntu with the Firefox, but anyways, let's just not go into that. So this is actually, we're working on the transparent layer as well, transparent channel, alpha channel as well in this line. And what I want, I'll just make a new line, and what I want here is to make this waviness, and there is no geometry function to make it waviness, So what we do is modulate. If you want like more like random waviness, I can do like noise 1. I'll just 1 0 to make it stopped. Okay, I forgot to add dot here. Okay, but this is not exactly what I wanted. It was more like uniform. So what I did was like actually OSC, but let's say OSC 30, maybe like no movement. But what it does is not exactly what we want, because when you think about like waviness, let's just take this out for a second. We want the waviness to be like going like this, like, I don't know how it's called. Is it like vertical or horizontal? Like if you vertically scan it, it's waviness, but the waviness is like going, like oscillating through the horizontal direction. But what OSC is that if you scan it horizontally, it has a color variation. So you have to like rotate it a bit. Well, if you rotate completely like 90 degrees, then you can have like sine wave basically. If you rotate it like halfway, maybe you can have something in between. Let's do it that way. I will not think too much. I'll just rotate 1, but again, I need to make it modulate, not stripes that I want to rotate, but modulating. OSC should have a bit of rotation. Yeah, let's keep it like this. Again, I have to do dot. Yeah, so this is like close to what I wanted, but I think it's a bit too much. Now it doesn't look like a kind of tape anymore. So one thing there are 2 things I can do. First, I can limit the modulation a little bit, because the second parameter that tells the amplitude of modulation, by default it's 0.1, but I might want like 0.03 or something. Okay, this is better, and I think I want the frequency of OSC a little bit less, maybe like 10, so that it looks like more like a tape that is like going sideways. This is quite nice, and I just have to like plug this in here. So instead of what I had, I just added this modulate line. So modulate function here, I added here. Now it's getting quite, like, it's not the longest code I've ever seen. I've done like crazy things, but probably like if you're following from the beginning tutorial, this is getting a bit like overwhelming. You can add more and more like new lines if you want. So it's clear that it's OSCs here, and this line is in charge of adding the thresholding in Luma to make it alpha channel, and the last one, inside layer, is in charge of like waviness. You can also like comment them, like if you do // you can say like waviness. This will be ignored by the compiler, so you can say, or compiler or interpreter, something like this, if that helps for you. I don't necessarily do it in this tutorial, but just saying that because now it's getting longer and longer, you might want to like find your way, and this is important that you're actually coding now with me, so that you're not just watching. It's not going to be like helpful for learning so much. So it's better that you might want to pause the video and try it out yourself, change the numbers, change the functions. How does it work? That's like best way to learn programming, I think. Not just Hydra, but any tutorial. You're not going to learn much by just watching it. Just try it out on your computer, stop the video, edit it, and see what's going to happen. And let's evaluate this. It works perfect. That it's the same thing, but with the backdrop. You can see the backdrop of the solid pink color. Great. So it's almost there. The last thing we want to add is the shadow. And now if you think about it, shadow is basically another layer. And if we work with Hydra like layers, we always start from the bottom layer, which is the solid and you can really like visualize it spatially so that we have this like solid pink color, and now we have this like white tape slapped on top of the solid color. And where does the shadow go? Is it on the tape or is it behind the tape? It's behind the tape, right? Because it's a shadow. So it's something that we want to work on between these two layers. So we just add another layer here, and that's where we're going to have the shadow. And we can always annotate, the shadow, and this is I call it the tape because it looks like a kind of 3D tape with, like bouncing. And the way it works is basically, I'll just like copy the same thing. Like I did the same thing here. Well, I'm going to do the same thing as a shadow. I'll just copy and paste because I'm a bit lazy. And for now, for a demonstration, I will just comment out the tape part. I think I have to be careful with the parentheses because it's kind of this and this are matching. Now it's getting a little bit complicated. You should find your way of like find the matching parentheses and so on, because you can screw up things quite easily from now on. But this tape part, the layer, what's inside the layer, I want to keep this out. You can delete it, but you want to come back to it. So I'm going to do Control/ to make commented. So it's still there, but the interpreter will ignore it. So we kind of like added new one, but kind of went back to the same code, because if you run it, it's basically I just duplicated but commented out one of them, so you will not see any difference. Now, let's just go back to this example. What is the characteristic of the shadow? It's actually almost the same as a tape, but it's black. And it has like less modulation, let's say. It's the same frequency, but it has less modulation. So it's quite easy to do. To make it black, you do the color function. And this is something, it's get a little bit tricky. I'm gonna like naturally jump into this part, but the order matters. So, well, okay, let's make it black. So it's like 0, 0, 0 with color. So the RGB will be like suppressed and they're all 0 black color, which should be quite obvious. I added here, and it doesn't work. Okay, so this would work. Now it's black color, which actually kind of nice color with a pink. If you do it, for example, here, it should work. Yes. But if you move it here, it doesn't work. Why is it? Because now we're saying that color is affecting OSC, and then we're doing thresholding in Luma, so actually everything will be wiped out, like as alpha 0. And that's not something we want. So it doesn't matter if you put it here or here, but you don't want to put it just right after OSC. So this is like, it's like a subtle difference, but it makes a drastic difference, and that's something you want to know. Yeah, just try it out and see what's going to happen. And also like just think like, why is this happening? Just, stop for a moment and yeah, just think about it. And also, so I've just put it nicely, so it's okay. Also, you can do some exercises. What if you want to make the shadow thicker or thinner? Maybe you can pause the video and try out, how you can make it. Is it, well, I can, provide several examples now, assuming that you tried some things out. But for example, you can just change the frequency of OSC, but this actually makes the overall thing bigger. But the distance or the pitch between the black ones and within black ones, they're actually the same. So the kind of the ratio doesn't change. Although overall, like it's also, you can add scale function, but that doesn't really change the, the ratio of these black part and pink part. If you want to change the ratio, then thresh 0.5, that's something you want to work on. If you do it 0.3, for example, then this black part becomes thicker. Now I'll go back to 0.5. And if you make it like 0.7, then the pink part becomes bigger. And that's because the original OSC has this gradient color from white to black. So if you change the parameter of thresh, you can kind of fine tune these things. But for now, I'll just keep it 0.5. And also, you can also stop the video and try to create like how to make this edge blurry, which I already explained, right? So I'm going to explain now that, for example, if you make this 0.03 into like 0.1, it doesn't really show much. 0.2. Or maybe because I have to change luma as well. Like this, and then you start to see that the edge is a bit softer now, because if you think about shadow, if you have like a really like a point light, it will make like very sharp edge. But in real life, you have like, I have like actually lights for the streaming or video recording, and this has like surface, and sun is also not a point, but it has some surface. So what happens, or actually it's scattered in the sky, so it's actually coming almost like parallel from the sky. So if you see like shadow, it's almost like blurry. I mean, that's why it's blurry. Like it's also like kind of inverse of, you know, if you think about the camera aperture, it's not like a small point. Well, it's a small point, but it can be like bigger, and then you have more like a blur or bokeh kind of effect. So it's the same with the shadow. It has some blurriness because the light comes scattered and also has some surface of light. So anyways, if you want to have like more like realistic shadow, you can probably enhance this a bit and make it a little bit blurrier. And yeah, so that's that. And the other way to make it like if you see shadow, it's not always like pitch black. If you want to make it gray, of course you can do like 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. But this is actually gray. It's not like soft shadow. It's actually quite ugly. Color has 4 parameters. We always like work with RGB, but the last one's alpha, which is also from 0 to 1. So if we say like, then actually the default is 1, so it's not going to affect, it doesn't mean that we make every alpha value 1, but it will multiply with 1s, which doesn't make any difference. But if you say like 0.5, then it will soften the shadow. It's actually looks like it's like softening the shadow. So that's another way to work with alpha, actually. Like, so luma is one way to do it, but also color, 4th parameter will affect the alpha channel. So I want maybe like 0.8 or something, so that it's not like black, but it's kind of like softening the effect. Now let's bring this back in. I know that I haven't done one more thing. So if you just bring this tape back in, you see like this like soft edge, which is actually quite nice. It's kind of like this, you know, CSS, HTML, how do you say, the shadow effects that you can make. This is already something interesting. It kind of like makes it a little bit like the tape is like lifted from the background. This is like one thing you can do, but also if you see this example, what it's doing is that it makes kind of like variation between the white part and black part, so that it looks like the tape is not just like lifted, but it has kind of this like mountains and valleys in the more like a 3D space. And that's possible by just adding, just changing the modulate parameter, not the modulating function itself, but the second parameter of modulate. If I say like the shadow has less modulation, then you see that the shadow has, like the curve is a little bit more dull, and the tape has more like dynamic curvature because of this difference between this modulate blah 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 0.01 and another one modulate 0.03. So the tape has more modulation shadow has like humble modulation, and this ends up like, this is not like a technique that like this is the tape technique, but it's just like, you know, kind of working with the composition using different layers. Now we have 3 layers: a solid, the OSC shadow, and OSC tape. And you can make kind of optical, almost like illusion, to make it look like 3D. So this is like, I just wanted to like talk about this, and this is the one way of like working with the composition. And another way that I'll introduce now is another way of layering that may be more actually relevant to feedback. So I'm quite happy with this, but I'll just delete it and I'll start from scratch. So now it was more like working with kind of 3D-ness, object, kind of physical material, texture. That's what I wanted to work with. But now I wanted to like maybe simplify a bit. What if I want to have, okay, like I can just start with the same backdrop. 0. Was it 3 or 0.2? I forgot. Something like this, and maybe it was 0.2. Anyways, I want to have like a frame. So this, let's say like this pink color is like outside the frame, and inside the frame, like it can be square, it can be circle, oval, but then inside that I want, let's say like OSC that's moving inside. So OSC is not covering an entire space, but it's kind of limited into this like frame. The way I do it, if you think about the kind of rectangle, that's shape. If you do the shape out, it's triangle because the first parameter is 3 by default, but this basically defines the n gone. It can be triangle if it's 3, 4 it can be, well, 4 is going to be square or rectangle, 5 is pentagon. I had to search that. I always forget. Anyways, and the funny thing is that, you know, it doesn't have to be natural number. You can do like this kind of weird thing, but it doesn't really make sense. I mean, if you want to work with this shape, that's perfect, but yeah, you can do like really funny things. Like also like, what if it's 2? You can do it actually, and it's actually very useful. It's very similar to like this stripe thing that they did with OSC. This can be useful in some cases. Also, this is also very useful. Anyways, well, 0. Okay, 0 is not really useful. But anyways, what if I do this? No. Anyways, so 4 is rectangle, and I want to work with this today. Well, in this part. Now, I want to basically overlay this on top of this pink color. That's something I want to do first. And just like I did before, let's say I do layer. And I'll just put this shape in there without out, right? And probably you guess that it will not show the pink part because shape 4 or shape function is not going to produce like variation in alpha. It's just like making this white color, black color. So the around the rectangle or triangle or oval, it's painted black. It's not alpha. So we do the same thing, just like, well, it's already like thresholded. So I'll just do luma. Because in OSC, we had to do like thresholding because it has some gradient of colors, but this doesn't have really, it has a little bit actually, just like the second parameter of thresh or luma. But anyways, let's say it's black and white. So we do this and it works perfectly. Now the next thing I want is, oh, maybe actually I want to make the size a little bit bigger. By default, it's 0.3, which defines the size relative to the whole canvas. So if we do like 0.5, it's the area-wise, it's not half of the area, it's half of the X direction, Y direction. So it's kind of a quarter of the size of the canvas. Anyways, now this is something I want to kind of frame my OSC. There are different ways to do it, but as a kind of continuation from we just built, I want to do OSC, like let's say like we use mult function, that's its multiplying. And what's good about mult is that you take, if you do multiply, it will multiply red, green, blue, and alpha channel separately. So, okay, just demonstrate by, well, I think that's the best way to demonstrate. Well, to demonstrate is the best way to explain. Now we have a lot of parentheses here. You might want to like add like new line here and there so that it's not confusing him. You might want another new line here, for example, whatever it works for you. But let's say this and evaluate, and it works perfectly because now this shape Luma, which is a multiplier, has RGBA alpha channel included, so that's going to affect OSC. So now it's like nicely framed, and then maybe I want to make it well, this is kind of maybe a bit slower as usual, and I also want some color into it. Nice. So this is very nice, and that's done. Almost. This works. This is great. But there's another way to do it. Almost the same thing, which is to use shape as a mask. Mult is again multiplying RGBA individually with between these OSC and shape Luma. So this works because I have Luma, but as soon as I take this Luma out, it will not work. Or I can add Luma here, but this will actually not do the same thing because now this red part is also trimmed. So again, the order matters. But there is a function called mask. And what mask does is that, like, intuitively you can think about like how to say, like, you know, combining shapes in, I don't know, Illustrator or something, or like in Photoshop you can kind of use one texture as like a mask, like alpha channel. So it's kind of replacing OSC's alpha channel, which is just uniformly 1, like opaque. We're going to use shape, and now we don't need Luma. We're going to use shape luminance. So I actually had to look up the code of Hydra, how mask works. Basically, it takes the luminance of the mask, which is a shape. So the white part becomes alpha 1, black part becomes alpha 0 of this base texture. Let's run it. Well, it works. It's great, actually, because now it's more concise, and also it's kind of intuitively, it's more understandable because now we're not saying Luma and the mult and so on, but we're just going to take OSC as kind of base texture, and we're going to use shape as an input to mask. So this shape is the mask, is a masking or stencil or whatever you can think of. This will basically cut out OSC, so white part of the shape remains, black part will be gone or becomes transparent. And we can make it almost like, like we can just make it one-liner. I know there are 3 closing parentheses, but it's not as bad as it looks like. It's quite concise. And why I made it one line, because I actually want to have few of these layers, and well, if you just evaluate this, it will not do anything because they're just overlapping on top of each other. But for example, what if I do like scroll? We've seen scroll X, scroll Y. These are like quite handy. There's also scroll function, which basically the first parameter is the scroll X and the second parameter is the scroll Y. So you can do something like this, and I'll just do scroll minus 0.1, minus 0.1, something like this. So now we have 3 layers. I think we didn't sort it well so that the base one, so because we always go from the top line of code is the bottom of the layer, right? So the solid is there, and then we have the middle, because now this is like almost like scroll 0, 0 to make it a bit verbose. So we have the first one in the middle, and the well, first of these ones. The second one goes a little bit shifted towards the top left, and the third one is like here. So if we want to kind of like have a nice transition, maybe something like, I don't know, let's like do it like this way. You can play with it, right? And also you can change, different like sources. It can be noise or Voronoi, or you can also use webcam with colorama and rotate and so on, and you can also manipulate these shapes as well, so you can do a lot of things. This is like not the result, I'm just like demonstrating the layering, but you can add more and more things to it. For example, like just to demonstrate, maybe I can make them fade like this. Oh, it's the other way around I want it, but anyways, something like this, so that the top OSC is quite like has vivid color, but then it kind of fades away. Something like this. You can make kind of poetic interpretation of it, or you can like add more layers. You can change shapes. You can start moving them. You can do a lot of things, and you can also combine it with what I did with this kind of like tape 3D effect kind of thing. Or you can do Kaleido with these tapes. You can do like really like go wild. So you have all these tools now to play with composition. And now in the next video, I'm gonna combine this. Well, I'm gonna use this layering technique in the feedback to make it a bit more like kind of crisp feedback visual effect, rather than like making it blurry all the time. It's not that like one is better than the other, but it's always good to have like different tools. So that's something I'm gonna be aiming for the next video. But yeah, please let me know what you create. I think with this you can do like you can really go wild. What function do you like? What combination worked? What the code you produced? Please let me know in the chat or in the comment down below, or you can post them on the Facebook group or Discord group. There are like different places where you can find Hydra community, or it can be Mastodon. And if you have questions, or I don't know, if you find something helpful from the video, please let me know in the comment down below. That's super helpful for me to keep motivation. Now I went through all the beginners tutorial, and now I have this starting this intermediate tutorial, which is it's not possible without you watching the video. So I'm really glad. And also, what do you want to learn in the next videos? Please let me know. I'll try to have this feedback from you, not visual feedback, to improve this video. So please like the video. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, and hope to see you in the next video. Bye.